The Oval Office meeting that devolved into a train wreck between Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and Vladimir Zelensky has taken an unexpected twist. There are now many accusations that Zelensky may have cursed J.D. Vance to his face. Of course, Democrats and people who don't like Trump and Vance are praising the move on social media, assuming that this is actually what happened, whereas others are outraged that Zelensky would have shown such disrespect to the vice president in the Oval Office. Here's the full clip, courtesy of Forbes.
Thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine? Did you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people in?
So social media users picked up on that moment, and according to Times Now, they ran this poll. Did Vladimir Zelensky call J.D. Vance, quote unquote, a B word in Ukrainian? Video goes viral. So what they're accusing him of saying is suka blyat, which translates to F-U-B. I put this into Google as well, so it's O suka blyat. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I don't speak Russian. And according to Google Translate, it translates to this. He's an F and B word. So I edited this video to show you the full context, but then zoomed in on Zelensky's face. So let's watch this together and you let me know what you think.
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on. I know what happens is you bring them on. I know what happens is you bring them on.
You know, honestly, I can sort of see it. I can sort of hear it. The O, suka. You definitely hear that sound, the S sound very strongly, and then the blyat. We can't quite hear it. The audio isn't clear. Obviously, the media is very far away, but the mouth shape looks like he could potentially be saying that.
I know what happens is you bring them on.
Now, I think, honestly, it's impossible to tell what he truly said unless we get a professional lip reader in there or if there's better audio of the event. So I personally am not going to put my opinion on what he said out there, but since people are talking about it, since this is now going viral online, I think it's fair game to talk about and ask you guys what you think, what you heard, if you think he said that, or if you agree with me that, hey, maybe we shouldn't read too much into it and maybe it's making a volatile situation even worse to publicly speculate on this. But I think that there's a lot more to this story. There's a lot more to this Oval Office meeting that meets the eye, which is why I wanted to talk about it. Because yes, the Trump administration did kick Zelensky out of the White House. People on my last video are trying to fact check me on that, but that actually did happen. And we actually have confirmation from Jackie Henrich, who works for Fox News. She wrote this. Trump kicked Zelensky out of the White House. He did not walk off on his own. Rare minerals deal was not signed, according to the White House. Ukrainians were begging to reset the negotiations, but Rubio and Waltz informed them that Zelensky would need to leave the White House grounds and only return when he's ready for peace. In my previous video, I did show a clip of the Ukrainian ambassador putting her hand to her face, looking as if she was crushed and about to cry. So I wonder if she's one of the ones begging for the reset. The president and U.S. officials felt disrespected by Zelensky by both his rhetoric and demeanor, cited that he was shrugging and rolling his eyes during the conversation. So I think that also feeds into the credibility of these accusations. But again, I don't want to speculate too much. And last but not least, apparently the White House had prepared lunch for Zelensky and the entire delegation, but once the delegation was kicked out, White House staffers ate the lunch instead. Now, next I wanted to show you this clip of Lindsey Graham. Graham is one of the largest supporters of Ukraine. He's very pro-Ukraine and was very pro-Vladimir Zelensky. He was one of the staunchest supporters of Zelensky. But after today's Oval Office meeting, he is now singing a different tune. This is a big deal. And Graham released some tidbits here that are very interesting within the context of everything that happened. Keep your eyes and ears peeled for when he starts talking about how he warned Zelensky.
All right.
For you, for us.
So, what do I think? Complete, utter disaster. I've been to Ukraine 8 or 9 times since the war started. I understand the consequences of Putin's actions against Ukraine. I appreciate what the Ukrainian people have done. They fought like tigers. At the end of the day, I was hoping that this minerals deal, which would be transformative in the relationship, would go over well. I talked to Zelensky this morning. Don't take the bait. President Trump was in a very good mood last night. Somebody asked me, am I embarrassed about Trump? I have never been more proud of the president. I was very proud of J.D. Vance, standing up for our country. We want to be helpful. What I saw in the Oval Office was disrespectful, and I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelensky again. I think most Americans saw a guy that they would not want to go in business with. The way he handled the meeting, the way he confronted the president was just over the top. So I think the relationship between Ukraine and America is important, vitally important. But can Zelensky do a deal with the United States? After what I saw, I don't know.
What would he need to do, sir? Three questions. Senator Graham.
You just had lunch with President Trump. What did he say to you about his interactions and whether he thinks
he was shocked? He was very upbeat. I told Zelensky, we'll talk about security guarantees. We'll talk about ceasefires and how the war ends. This is a process. You have a new relationship with America, a $500 billion, $500 billion deal that President Trump is proud of, that gives us an interest worth defending. Let's talk about the positive. But he was terrible at Munich, Zelensky, and I think he has made it almost impossible to sell to the American people that he's a good investment, that he is a good business partner.
Last question. Senator Graham. Hey, one at a time. One at a time. Christian Daytop. Senator Graham, thank you. Do you think President Zelensky needs to resign to resume these peace talks?
He either needs to resign and send somebody over that we can do business with, or he needs to change.
Look, obviously Lindsey Graham is not 100% pro-Trump or 100% behind Trump with every move. So if Trump now has the support of Lindsey Graham and Vladimir Zelensky has lost it, that is a very big deal and not a good sign for Ukraine right now. So I did want to point that out. I think it's interesting, too, that he talked about warning Zelensky, and he gave insight, too, that Trump was in a good mood last night. And by all appearances, it appeared that this deal, the mineral deal, was actually going to happen, but it evolved so quickly. And so I really think that feeds into what we've talked about already in this video and all the news that's out there, that Zelensky was dismissive, he was disrespectful as far as shrugging his shoulders, rolling his eyes, now the accusation that he potentially cursed J.D. Vance, and then losing one of your key supporters in the Senate. This can't have been what Zelensky and his delegation were looking for. Now, in case you missed it, because it was towards the end of my last video and not everyone saw it, but apparently not a lot of other content creators or even media outlets are showing this, but this is one of the Ukrainian diplomats, one of the ambassadors, literally putting a hand to her face, trying to cover it. She looks like she's on the verge of tears, and honestly, I felt really bad for her.
And you meant stop getting killed.
Of course we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want to ceasefire?
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
There wasn't
Doesn't matter
anything
for you.
Yeah, you could tell she was uncomfortable. You could tell she wanted Zelensky to shut up and was just wanted the whole thing to start over. But over on CNN, Christiane Amanpour did the exact same thing, her hand to her face, just looking totally in disbelief.
Guys, come on, let's move, please.
Wow. Just wow. That was something. I want to go straight to our chief White House correspondent, Caitlin Collins, who was in the Oval Office, as we heard before we saw the tape, and CNN chief international anchor, Christiane Amanpour. Caitlin, I want to start with, look at her face. I mean, Christiane, hold that thought for once. Okay, actually, Christiane, please, take it away.
Never in the history of modern diplomacy, war, peace, whatever, have I ever seen anything like it. We just have to hope that for the safety of the free world and for the American people, for the European people, for the Ukrainian people, that these two presidents get out of breath and try to iron out their differences. This was an entirely personal go-to with so many mistruths and misfacts. J.D. Vance, who once said about Ukraine, I don't really care whatever happens to Ukraine. says to Zelensky, who spent a long time for what.
And then obviously you can hear her mic cutting off, and Dana Bash stepped in talking about her mic issues. But they brought her on the entire afternoon to give her analysis on this. As you could see on the screen, as you could hear from her accent, she is based in Europe, in London to be specific. And so she's giving her foreign analysis, but she misses the boat completely as to why Americans elected both Donald Trump and J.D. Vance.
From a European and an overseas perspective, what seemed to have happened was this very strange new White House way of having these long and lengthy Oval Office sprays with the press where they do talk for a long time. It's not usual. This is, an accident waiting to happen. You saw the Zelensky handshake as he met with President Trump at the portico. He was incredibly tense. Zelensky's body language, very tense, knew everything that was riding on this, on this meeting. And then, as everybody said, a fairly okay meeting devolved into this really horrendous catastrophe in the last 10 minutes. And as everybody has said, launched by the intervention of the Vice President. Vice President J.D. Vance, this year in Munich, basically, washed his hands of Ukraine. Last time he was in Munich at the Security Conference, basically told Europeans and Ukrainians that I don't care really much what happens to Ukraine. So there's some animosity there, as you can imagine.
So I covered J.D. Vance's speech when he went to Germany on my channel. I did a deep dive on that. I released at least 2 videos covering it. And J.D. Vance's focus was actually about free speech in Europe and how we're supposed to be allies with Germany, Europe, but they're cracking down on free speech. Isn't that supposed to be one of our shared values? That was the point that J.D. Vance was trying to make. So Christiane Amanpour is kind of misrepresenting that. And then on top of all of that, she's criticizing the transparency that's happening in the Oval Office. Sure, Trump has never been traditional. He's never been by the book, but that's what Americans love about him. That's what his base loves about him. And people want to see transparency. They want to see these discussions happen in open. And in my previous video, I explained how this entire confrontation happened. I explained that this was a 40-minute meeting. I explained that they were there to celebrate the mineral deal, which is now called off. But they were answering questions from the press, and they were answering questions specifically for the mineral deal. Now, what Christiane Amanpour and all these other media outlets are suggesting is that it was J.D. Vance who instigated the fight. But as I talked about in my previous video, it was Zelensky who actually changed the tone of the entire conversation. Again, the whole purpose of this was to celebrate the mineral deal. They were going to go to lunch, and then they were going to have negotiations behind the scenes, behind closed doors, not in the Oval Office with the media present. So even there, Amanpour can't get her facts straight. This wasn't supposed to be a negotiation out in front of the media. This was supposed to be a celebration for the mineral deal, and then they were answering questions from the press. So J.D. Vance answered a question, and then Zelensky provoked it by trying to debate J.D. Vance, by trying to get J.D. Vance to clarify a point, rather than saving that negotiation for later on.
Untruths about Zelensky never saying thank you, and a very, twisted and tortured version of what's actually been going on during this war. But I think, as many people said, Zelensky's main aim, as he said himself, but I want to ask what the US is prepared to do going forward. And perhaps I need to ask, whose side is the Trump administration on, Ukraine's or Putin's? And I think what you saw in that meeting was much more of the United States administration, the president and the vice president, taking all the Putin talking points and being frustrated with Zelensky and using those talking points.
I don't think Putin wants the war to end. I think Putin wants the war to continue, and he wants to take Ukraine. He wants to take much more of the territory than what he already has. I think the only party that's actually talking about peace right now is the United States. Russia and Ukraine definitely want to fight this, but the media is going to do what they're going to do. They keep trying to paint Trump as a Putin toady, as a Putin puppet, so that's nothing new. Last but not least, MSNBC's Stephanie Ruhle made this a point about women leaders. Yeah, her main takeaway in all of this was feminism. Maybe the world does need more women leaders. The implication here being that we would be better off today with Kamala Harris rather than Donald Trump and JD Vance. But as always, all of that is just my analysis and commentary. That is what's going on in the world of politics from my point of view, and I would love to hear from you. So, that alleged curse from Zelensky, do you agree with the people on social media claiming that he cursed JD Vance under his breath, or do you think he said something else, or do you think you don't have enough information? It's impossible to tell. Personally, I can buy it. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually said it. However, I've said on this channel, I will always be honest. I'm not going to say things just to make people happy. I know that that's the big bandwagon and big theory right now, but my personal take is it's inconclusive. I'm not saying I don't believe it. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's inconclusive, and just for my own integrity and for the trust that I hopefully have with most of you, inconclusive. But like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if the accusations are true. If you haven't already, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. I know it's a simple thing to ask for, but it really does help me reach more viewers like you in the algorithm. Be sure to smash that subscribe button and to check out one of these videos.